This is East Asia Tonight.
Good evening, I'm Otelli Edwards. Tonight's top stories from East Asia. Taiwan backs Japan as Tokyo's clash with Beijing escalates, with Taipei accusing China of weaponizing trade and tourism. China, meantime, postpones a trilateral meeting with Japan and South Korea. But Beijing is not letting the diplomatic row delay the opening of 40 more entry ports for Taiwan residents. Cross-Strait travel now faster, with 30-minute processing and fee waivers for first-time visitors. The Philippines sentences former mayor and suspected Chinese agent Alice Guo to life in prison for human trafficking, tied to a scam center targeting foreigners. And South Korea's Coast Guard says crew negligence may have caused yesterday's ferry to run aground off the southwest coast. An officer was reportedly distracted by his phone. And firefighters in Japan are battling the country's worst blaze in decades for the third day in a row. One person is dead, dozens of homes destroyed, and evacuees are urgently in need of aid.
Also this hour, the COP30 climate summit in Brazil is looking to sustainable aviation fuel to help the industry achieve net zero. I'm Yasmin Yonkers, and I'll be back to explain just how this and other measures in the future can make flying greener.
Now, trade between China and Japan is taking a beating as the diplomatic row over Taiwan escalates. Beijing says economic ties have taken a big hit, while Tokyo is seeking the removal of import bans on Japanese seafood products.
中方敦促日方，本着对历史和中日关系负责任的态度，收回错误言行，切实履行对华承诺，为两国经贸合作创造良好环境。如果日方一意孤行，继续在错误的道路上越走越远，中方将坚决采取必要措施，一切后果由日方承担。
政府としては中国による日本産水産物の輸入規制については、昨年9月に日中両政府で発表した日中間の共有された認識、これをしっかり実施していくこと、そのことが何より重要であり、引き続き中国側に対して、現在申請中の輸出関連施設の速やかな再登録を含む輸出の円滑化を働きかけていくとともに、残された10都県産の水産物の輸入規制の撤廃等を強く求めていく考えであります。
China and Japan have both not confirmed the latest reported re-implementation of a seafood ban sparked by the row. Taiwanese President William Lai showed his support for Tokyo with a lunch of Japanese-sourced sushi. The island has accused China of weaponizing trade and tourism.
我们在这个关键的时刻我们也要支持日本能够有效的去稳定局面，那阻止中共的霸凌行为。
Well, for more insights, we are now joined by CNA senior correspondents Victoria Jen in Taipei and Tan Yuguan in Shanghai. Well, Yuguan, over to you first. Let's talk about measures. What sort of measures is China threatening to take if Japan walks down what it's calling the wrong path?
Well, today at a regular Chinese Commerce Ministry news briefing, a spokesperson says that China will take, and I quote, the necessary measures, adding that the Japanese side cannot expect to seek benefits while hurting feelings. Let's take a listen to what the spokesperson had to say.
我要强调的是，日本首相高市早苗的涉华错误言论，激起了中国民众的强烈公愤。日方不能指望一边伤害感情，一边索取利益，这不是同中方打交道的正确方式。中方敦促日方立即纠正错误做法。
Now, as you mentioned yesterday, we had indication that China will ban all imports of Japanese seafood. We do not yet have confirmation of that move. It comes months after China partly lifted a previous ban issued in 2023. The original ban was imposed in response to Japan's decision, if you recall, to release wastewater from the Fukushima nuclear plant. Now, yesterday, the foreign ministry here only said that Japan failed to provide the technical documentation it committed to, without actually saying directly if the ban is already back in place. He went on to say that there will be no market for Japanese seafood because of the public outrage over Prime Minister Takaichi's remarks. Today, the ministry spokesperson further added that the competent authority will conduct scientific review and ensure products are up to regulation. Kyodo News Agency, meanwhile, also reported that China has also suspended talks on resuming beef imports from Japan. Now, on the diplomatic front, China has called off the trilateral meeting with Japan and South Korea. The foreign ministry spokesperson saying today that Takaichi remarks regarding Taiwan have hurt the feelings of the Chinese people, challenged the post-war international order, and undermined the foundation and atmosphere of trilateral cooperation. And therefore, there was a lack of conditions for holding the meeting. Otelli?
Now, Yuguan, I also want to pick up on, Taiwanese President William Lai posting the picture of his lunch of Japanese food on social media, basically expressing his support for Japan. Have we heard from China, their comment on this?
Yes, the foreign ministry spokesperson during today's regular news briefing did talk about this, but he merely reiterated Beijing's one China stance. He says, and I quote, "Taiwan is China's Taiwan, and it is an inseparable part of China's territory." He also said that no matter how much the Lai Ching-te's administration performs its grandstanding, it cannot change this ironclad fact. Otali?
Well, thanks for that, Yuguan. Let's turn to you now, Victoria. Let's talk about Taiwan's open support for Japan. How is that going to influence regional dynamics as more countries pay attention to the Taiwan Strait?
Well, Taiwan's support for Japan is more than symbolic. Analysts said it carries a real regional weight. By openly backing Tokyo at a moment when it's under direct pressure from Beijing, Taiwan is reinforcing the idea that Asian security is deeply interconnected. It sends the message that China's use of economic coercion doesn't target countries one by one. It affects the stability of the entire region. You also saw this support play out very publicly. President William Lai posted photos of himself eating sushi sourced directly from Japan just hours after reports that China would halt all imports of Japanese seafood. It was a deliberate gesture to show political and cultural solidarity with Japan, and it was widely shared on social media here in Taiwan. Now, Taiwan's leadership sees Japan taking a political risk by speaking so directly, and Lai's move signals appreciation for that stance. More broadly, Taiwan's support could encourage other regional players to speak more openly about Taiwan's strait security. It strengthens Japan's long-standing argument that peace here is vital for Asia's economy and supply chains.
Vic, help us understand. I mean, are there concerns that there may be some kind of tangible impact on Taiwan as this spat continues?
Yes, there is growing concern in Taiwan that this China-Japan dispute could spill over and create real consequences for the island. Taiwan has experienced many forms of retaliations from Beijing before, from sudden fruit and seafood bans to cut in tourism and more military activity near its airspace. So people here know that when tensions rise in the region, Taiwan often feels some of the aftershocks. Now, economically, there is worry that China could apply pressure on certain Taiwanese industries in the same way it is now targeting Japanese seafood and tourism. Taiwan is already working to diversify its markets, but any new restrictions would still hurt sectors that rely heavily on exports to China. There's also the security angle. Whenever Beijing wants to send a political message, it sometimes increases military drills around Taiwan or crosses the medium line in the Taiwan Strait. Even symbolic moves can raise anxiety and affect markets. And politically, Taiwan understands that it is in a sensitive position. While supporting Japan sends an important diplomatic message, it also risks Taiwan being pulled deeper into a dispute between two major powers. That's why officials here are watching closely and preparing for possible ripple effects.
Well, thanks so very much for that. CNA senior correspondents Victoria Jen in Taipei and Tan Yu-Guan in Shanghai. But Taiwan also the cause of a furore between China and Panama. Chinese diplomats have asked Panamanian lawmakers to cancel a trip to the island, but Panama has hit back, accusing Beijing of meddling. The Central American state was caught between the U.S. and China earlier this year when Washington accused China of influencing operations at the strategic Panama Canal. In the latest flare-up, the Chinese embassy in Panama said that lawmakers' trip to Taiwan violates the One China principle and accused the Central American nation of intervening in Chinese internal affairs. Panama's Foreign Relations Ministry said it does not accept restrictions or pressure that tries to influence its legitimate decisions, hitting the Chinese embassy with counter-accusations of meddling in Panamanian affairs. Well, Panama established relations with China back in 2017 after breaking them off with Taiwan. South Korea's Coast Guard says negligence by the captain and navigating officer could be the cause of an incident involving a passenger ferry that ran aground off the southwestern coast yesterday.
그 부분은 이제 그 추가 조사를 해야 되는데 현재로서는 그 선장 또는 그 항해사의 과실로 판단하고 있습니다.
A report suggests a crew member became distracted by his mobile phone when the ship struck a rocky island. The Coast Guard said it plans to seek criminal charges. The vessel, which was traveling from Jeju Island to the port city of Mokpo, was carrying 267 people. All passengers were safely rescued with no serious injuries reported. Authorities mobilized 17 ships, 4 coastal vessels, a plane, and special personnel for the rescue mission. The incident has revived memories of the country's major ferry disaster in 2014, in which 300 people died.
그냥 죽을 수도 있겠다는 생각은 했어요. 너무 큰 소리라서 이게 뭔가 큰 사고가 났겠구나. 근데 세월호 때 워낙 많이 봐가지고 이럴 때는 침착하게 밖으로 이동하고 구명조끼를 입고 대기해야 된다. 이거를 알고 있었어요. 근데 많은 사람들이 다 그렇게 행동을 했던 것 같아요.
Well, meantime, firefighters in Japan are scrambling to contain a massive fire which has been burning over the southern coastal city of Oita for a third day. Well, the blaze has ripped through more than 170 homes, killing at least one person. The inferno has already scorched around 48,900 square meters, roughly the size of 7 football fields, and is the country's worst urban blaze in nearly half a century. Strong winds have driven the flames into nearby forested slopes and an uninhabited island, complicating containment efforts. The cause of the fire is still under investigation. Residents of the Sagonoseki district in Oita have been evacuated to a nearby shelter. The city's governor, Kichiro Sato, assures evacuees that authorities are fully committed to offering their full support. But victims are growing increasingly anxious. Improving living conditions for evacuees has become an urgent issue, given that they will likely remain sheltered for a long period. Coming up next on East Asia Tonight, Google expands its global AI footprint in the region, opening its largest AI hardware engineering center outside the U.S. in Taiwan. And Xiaomi sees momentum building up for its EV business a year after venturing into the sector. Hello there. Good to have your company on East Asia Tonight. It is now time for your business news and a rally in tech stocks in the broader AI chip supply chain as NVIDIA's strong sales outlook tempered fears of an AI bubble that have reverberated in markets for the last week. We've got SK Hynix, Tokyo Electron and Adventist ending the day's trading in the green with comfortable gains, up 3.1%, 4.73% and more than 7%. Well, the rally comes after Nvidia reported record revenue for the third quarter and stronger than expected guidance. Revenue came in at about $57 billion, beating the $54.9 billion estimate. Nvidia adding that it expects sales of $65 billion this current quarter. And you've got CEO Jensen Huang repeatedly downplaying concerns about an AI bubble. Just last month, he said that the company has more than $500 billion of revenue coming over the next few quarters. And looks like it's upbeat mood in East Asia as investors cheer Nvidia's strong results, which eased valuation concerns over the AI sector. Japan's Nikkei ended the day up 2.7%, snapping a four-day decline. Kospi closing nearly 2% higher, and tech-heavy Taiwanese benchmark rising more than 3%. Now, Taiwan's export orders could surge past $700 billion next year, a record high. The Economy Ministry says global demand for the island's chips and tech remains strong, fueled by the race to build artificial intelligence. Orders from Taiwan, home to chip giant TSMC and other major tech firms, are seen as a key gauge of worldwide tech demand. And looks like Taiwan is cheering another significant tech investment. Google has launched its largest AI infrastructure hardware engineering center outside the U.S. on the island. The new facility will support Google's global data centers with technology developed in Taipei, powering billions of devices worldwide. The U.S. has lauded the move, saying the new Google Engineering Center reflects a partnership with the island. Taiwan has warned of the risks involved in using Chinese-developed AI systems like DeepSeek. China's government has dismissed such concerns. Speaking at the opening, Taiwan's president said that the decision by Google showed that the island can be a hub for what he calls building secure and trustworthy AI. Well, China is reportedly mulling a stimulus package for its sluggish property sector amid fears that it will destabilize the country's financial system. Bloomberg reports that the country's housing ministry is considering a raft of options, which include expanding mortgage subsidies for new home buyers nationwide, raising income tax rebates for mortgage borrowers, and lowering transaction costs. This comes amid a deepening slump in the housing market in recent months, with both new and resale homes declining the sharpest last month over the past year. And that's despite an easing of requirements in the three largest cities, Beijing, Shanghai, and Shenzhen. Well, China is keen to turn around the property market's years-long slump, and that's as Chinese banks' holdings of bad loans surged to nearly $500 billion in September. Analysts say the slump is putting off buyers who doubt the viability of real estate as a store of wealth, adding that the housing market has not bottomed out yet. China International Capital Corporation, or CICC, is planning to merge with two state-owned brokerages as Beijing accelerates reforms to build world-class investment banks. The proposed deal with Dongxing Securities and Cinda Securities will be done via a share swap, but pricing details were not disclosed. The deal is set to create China's fourth largest investment banking giant, with assets exceeding $140 billion. CICC says the merger will support financial reforms, consolidate the industry, and better serve national strategies. Beijing had long mulled merging its state-run banks, but momentum picked up after President Xi Jinping last year called for top-tier players to take on Wall Street giants like Goldman Sachs. CICC is currently China's top underwriter for Hong Kong IPOs, but has faced stiff domestic competition. Trading in all three stocks has been suspended in Shanghai, with CICC also pausing trades in Hong Kong. It looks like Xiaomi has raised its delivery target, expecting to deliver more than 400,000 cars this year as it sees momentum building up for EV businesses. Xiaomi turned a quarterly profit for the first time since its foray into the sector early last year, encouraging Chief Lei Jun to revise up the delivery goal in a social media post today. He also celebrated the company's 500,000th vehicle rolling off the assembly line. The company, however, faces headwinds in both its smartphone and EV businesses. Rising costs of memory chips are eating into its smartphone margins, with a little wiggle room for China's price-sensitive customers, and a phasing out of a tax break on EV purchases in China expected to sap demand. Logistics giant FedEx says it's ready for growth and doubling down on cost cuts. The firm has reinstated its full-year outlook. It's on track to reduce costs by $1 billion in fiscal 2026. Well, CNA's Roland Lim caught up with Raj Subramaniam, President and CEO FedEx, at the Bloomberg New Economy Forum.
We're projecting now in this current quarter that we're going to be up year over year versus last year, for the same quarter. As far as the industry goes, the globalization trends, there's changing from one set of pattern now to another, and we are in the middle of this transition. And I think the supply chain patterns themselves are changing, and those with established networks in place stand to gain because new markets are emerging, new trends are emerging, new lanes are emerging. Right here in Asia, 18 of the top 20 lanes are right here in Asia. We're seeing, we are already making changes and in investing in flights directly from Singapore to the U.S. and back. We have added capacity between Taiwan and Korea. We have put in Vietnam, in Thailand. So we're making these changes on a rapid and agile basis. For me, I think those folks who react in an agile manner will win in this kind of environment.
Supply chains have been rather resilient, would you say? I mean, when tariffs were implemented earlier this year, we did see a lot of front-loading, so numbers were good. I mean, it's only towards the end of this year we are seeing export numbers maybe coming down a little. What's your outlook for 26?
I think, you used the word resilient, and that's very important because I think to be resilient in this kind of environment, you have to be able to work hand in hand with the physical networks and technology to make sure that we can have the best possible information in the world. I expect next year to be more or the same as what we've seen this year, but we'll have to see. This is a very dynamic environment. It's very difficult to predict how that's going to play out, and I think the most important thing right now is to stay agile and to see how these patterns are changing.
What's been the fallout from the de minimis rule being taken away? I mean, are you seeing, for example, lower volumes from business to consumer packages, or are you seeing slower clearance rates for parcels?
So I think with the de minimis going away, there was an instant reduction in the B2C part of the equation. I've also been very impressed by how these B2C players have quickly changed their business models in the last few months to adapt to these changing conditions. And as far as the number of packages that have to be now formally cleared, of course, have increased post the de minimis rules changing. What FedEx is doing is with investing in people, investing in technology, to make sure our customers' supply chains are continuing to be as streamlined as possible in these dynamic and changing conditions.
You're targeting an ambitious cost reduction program. You are saying that you're going to reduce costs next fiscal year by $1 billion. What's been the low-hanging fruits here for you? I mean, what methods have been working for FedEx?
Well, we have actually reduced our cost structure by $4 billion in the last 3 years, and this is an additional $1 billion over that $4 billion. So we have, this has been a long, hard work. At this point, the 3 levels of transformation that we are under. The first transformation is networks transformation. We are putting not only the U.S. domestic networks together, but also reshaping our international networks. Second, we're going through an organizational transformation. We had multiple, organizational structure. Now we're going to one FedEx. And third is digital transformation. So all these 3 transformations are underway at FedEx.
Coming up next on East Asia tonight, China widens access for Taiwan residents to on-arrival travel permits amid icy cross-Strait ties. And the Philippines hands a life sentence to a former mayor for human trafficking. She's also been accused of having ties to Chinese crime syndicates. You're watching East Asia tonight, and here are the headlines we're following. The Philippines sentences a former mayor accused of having ties to Chinese crime syndicates to life imprisonment for human trafficking. Alice Guo was convicted for her role in setting up a scam center that victimized foreigners. China dismisses as grandstanding an apparent show of support for Japan by Taiwanese President William Lai. Taipei has openly pledged support for Tokyo, blaming Beijing for weaponizing trade and tourism. And despite frosty cross-Strait ties highlighted by the row, China is making it easier than ever for Taiwan residents to visit the mainland. Well, in fact, more than 40 additional entry ports across China will begin issuing on-arrival travel permits for Taiwan residents from today, bringing the total number to 100. The scheme covers land, air, rail, and sea ports, and the permit is valid for a single visit to the mainland. Beijing says the entire process will take only 30 minutes, and first-time visitors will also have their application fee waived and will be able to visit more than 3,000 scenic spots for free. The mainland's Taiwan Affairs Office has said these policies aim to facilitate cross-strait exchanges and cooperation. For more, CNA's Deborah Wong joins us live from Shenzhen, and Victoria Jen once again coming back to us from Taipei. So, Victoria, tell us, how big of a game changer is this expansion of the on-arrival permit scheme, and what has been a response to it so far?
Well, it's a significant change in terms of convenience, but how big, it really depends on the traveler. Up to now, most Taiwanese needed to apply for the Taiwan compatriot permit before going to the mainland. And that meant bringing a Taiwan passport, ID card, a recent photo, fill out the form, and paying about $50, and then waiting around 7 working days while the application was being processed. Now, regular business travelers usually hold a long-term permit that lasts several years, but for everyone else, it requires some planning. Now, the new on-arrival scheme removes that upfront step. So far, the response in Taiwan has been mixed, but generally practical. People who traveled often like the flexibility, and others say that it won't change much because they already have long-term permits. Now, let's take a listen.
对于我们有些需要出差的人，常常往返大陆的，就是很方便的政策，对吧？对吧？这样也是促进两岸关系啊。
因为我自己本身就会来往大陆，所以其实我觉得这没有差。可是对于有些人可能老一辈的，会想要再前往过去旅游，或者是做什么事这样子。
So overall, there's appreciation for the added flexibility. But for many travelers, especially frequent ones, it's more of an improvement than a complete game changer.
Okay, so Deborah, from China's point of view, what are they trying to signal here?
I think for China, it really is signaling a long-term openness strategy with Taiwan because, you know, Chinese travelers right now who wish to visit Taiwan can also do so can get the permits at any exit entry offices across the mainland. Previously, they could only do it at a place where the household was registered. And we are talking also about the on-arrival permits for Taiwanese that, you know, Victoria just mentioned. You can see that ports where China actually has borders with Russia, North Korea, Mongolia, Hong Kong, and Macau have also been included in the expanded policy. Essentially, what this does is to, you know, give Taiwan residents more options to to travel to China from wherever they are in the world, and they can also get a 5-year multiple entry permit if they choose to extend it, you know, and they can get that permit within 4 days on the mainland. So this is really an expansion of Taiwan-friendly policies that we've seen in recent years. If you remember, within the last 2 years, in fact, Fujian province, which is the province closest to Taiwan, announced a policy, you know, where Taiwan people can live and work there, can settle down there for as long as they wish without getting a residence permit. So I did speak to an analyst to find out what all these mean for cross-strait ties. Have a listen.
It's part of a long-term strategy to cultivate social, economic, and even emotional connectivity across the strait. Beijing wants Taiwan people to see that even as the political dialogue may be frozen or very difficult or strained, that engagement is possible and that there are benefits to it.
So this policy change was announced at the start of the month. It happened actually days and weeks before the China-Japan spat over Taiwan happened. And you can still see that the policy still took effect today, still took effect on November 5th in regards to the other visa relaxation measures. Even so, Professor Reyes did mention that, mobility policies cannot truly overcome political mistrust, but, and any measures will only be incremental. And he went on to say that Beijing right now is still watching the situation in Taiwan very closely because DPP's William Lai, he has faced several political setbacks. And so from the Chinese perspective, all these open policies could eventually, hopefully pave a way for a smoother relationship with the Kuomintang in, ahead of the next election if the DPP's popularity wanes.
Right. So, Victoria, the Taiwan Affairs Office, well, they say that this move basically aims to facilitate cross-strait exchanges. But how much impact is this really going to have on ties across the strait?
Well, Beijing is promoting this as a step to bring the two sides closer together. And it's not the only gesture we've seen. Over the past year, China has opened more flight routes, encouraged tourism in selected provinces, and offer various discounts or cultural incentives for Taiwanese visitors. All of this is part of a softer outreach to boost people-to-people contact. But the larger reality is more complicated. While these travel incentives are being rolled out, China has also continued regular military drills around Taiwan. For many people here, those actions overshadow the goodwill messaging on the travel front. Public sentiment reflects that divide too. A recent survey shows 44% of Taiwanese support independence, which is slightly lower than previous polls, but still part of a long-term trend where people feel politically and culturally distinct from China. That means a friendlier travel policy won't necessarily translate into warmer attitude. Now, in the short term, the new on-arrival system may encourage more short trips, and Beijing hopes that increased personal interactions will gradually soften perceptions. But without changes in the security and political side, it's unlikely to shift the overall direction of cross-strait relations.
And Deborah, the new immigration measures to facilitate people-to-people exchange, they apparently also include more flexibility for talent exchange between the mainland, Hong Kong and Macau. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are two key policies to watch out for with, in the new measures. We are seeing right now more mainland talents from the Yangtze River Delta, from the Beijing, Tianjin, Hebei region, now able to apply for multiple entry permits to Hong Kong and Macau. Now, this is quite different from the policy before, because last time it was only restricted to mainland talents from Beijing, Shanghai, Guangdong area. And then the next one we're looking at is also smoother cross-border flows between Shenzhen and Hong Kong, especially in the Hetao Shenzhen Hong Kong Cooperation Zone. On top of multiple entry permits to Hong Kong and Macau, mainland talents can now get even more tax policies, more tax-free policies, priority clearance at ports, and, cargo ferrying any materials related to tech, science, research. They can also get priority clearance. Now, this is on top of a policy last year where, foreign permanent residents living in Hong Kong and Macau could apply for multiple entry permits into the mainland. So all these collectively, when we look at them, it is really in a bid to grow cross-border mobility, specifically for knowledge transfer, because China has made it clear it will go all out, to improve its resilience for science and technology in the next 5-year plan. And talent growth is going to be a key enabler to achieve that, because Beijing knows that it has a demographic problem. Fertility rates are going down, and so talent really is a building block to solve that productivity issue. Ateli.
Many thanks for that, Deborah, coming to us live from Shenzhen, and also thanks to you, Victoria, in Taipei. Now, in other news, a Philippine court has sentenced a former mayor to life imprisonment for human trafficking. Alice Guo was convicted for her role in setting up a scam center that victimized foreigners. She has also been fined 2 million pesos, or roughly $33,000. The ruling comes as Southeast Asian governments are fighting transnational criminal syndicates. Well, Maria Ronson has all the details.
Life imprisonment awaits Alice Guo, a businesswoman turned politician. Guo, a former mayor of Bamban, in fact was a Chinese national, operating under a Filipino identity, Alice Real Guo. She played a key role for qualified trafficking and in allowing her municipality to become the site of massive offshore gaming and scam operations known locally as POGOs, or Philippine Offshore Game Operators. Before running for office, Guo incorporated a real estate firm, Baofu, which then leased the 7-hectare property where the alleged crimes took place, which is just behind the municipal hall where her office was when she was mayor in 2022. She claims to have divested the business before she ran, but the prosecution presented evidence which clearly showed this was unlikely. Guo's business partner in Baofu is the Chinese gang leader Wang Jian, who is wanted in China. They were both business partners with 2 money laundering convicts in Singapore. Guo was sentenced to reclusion perpetua, or 40 years in prison, along with 3 other Filipina incorporators, and were asked to pay a fine of 2 million each per case, on top of money reparations to their victim complainants. They were not in court for the sentencing, attending the proceedings instead via video conference. The scam compound in Bamban, which allegedly harbored victims and facilitated recruitment for POGO-related scams, was forfeited to the government. It is unclear at this stage whether Guo plans to appeal. For CNA, I am Maria Ronson in Metro Manila.
Coming up next on East Asia Tonight, sustainable aviation fuel has taken the spotlight at the UN climate talks in Brazil. We look at the roadblocks Indonesia faces in scaling up production of the greener alternative jet fuel. Indonesia's state-owned oil and gas company, Pertamina, plans to boost production of sustainable aviation fuel, or SAF, by expanding capacity at existing refineries and possibly building new green ones. Well, the government aims to raise the national SAF blend mandate for international flights to 5% by 2035. But as CNA's senior correspondent Saiful Bari Ismail reports, high costs and limited feedstock could slow progress.
This is Indonesia's largest oil refinery operated by Pertamina in Cilacap Regency, Central Java. It can process 348,000 barrels of crude a day, supplying about 34% of the nation's fuel needs.
Pertamina's Cilacap refinery is being developed into a green refinery to produce sustainable aviation fuel. It can produce about 1,400 kiloliters of the fuel per day, roughly half the volume of an Olympic-sized swimming pool. Around 3% of that comes from used cooking oil.
Sustainable aviation fuel made from used cooking oil is produced through a series of chemical processes. The oil is first mixed with kerosene and heated to about 70 degrees Celsius. The mixture is then transferred to a reactor where it's heated to over 300 degrees Celsius and passed through layers of catalysts that trigger and speed up chemical reactions. Hydrogen is also added as a key reactant, making the fuel more stable and suitable for jet engines. The result is a cleaner fuel that can power aircraft while cutting aviation's carbon footprint by more than 80%. Efforts are underway to boost production and raise the share of used cooking oil in the SAF blend.
The catalyst will also have to be improved with another catalyst that can used in our unit, so then we can process the SAF to more than 3%. Our R&D team, they always improve how much the percentage of the yucho, or make another unit to increase the capability and the productivity.
Pertamina also plans to expand its green refinery program to other parts of Indonesia, taking advantage of the country's strong potential for used cooking oil collection.
Di Indonesia saat ini konsumsi minyak goreng sekitar 6-7 juta ton per tahunnya. Kalau kita bisa kumpulkan 20% saja seperti di negara maju, kita akan mendapatkan jumlah bahan baku yang sangat besar yang cukup untuk industri di dalam negeri.
In Tegal Reja district, not far from the Cilacap refinery, residents gather at a local waste bank to deposit their used cooking oil. It's a big change from before when many would just pour it down the drain. Now they can sell it for around 30 cents per kilogram, turning kitchen waste into cash.
Mijel itu di setiap rumah tangga kan ada. Dan tentu saja ini menambah pendapatan walaupun kecil, dan itu membuat kami itu semangat, dan harapan kami ke depan minyak jelantah itu harganya naik lebih tinggi lagi. Syukur bisa 10.000 1 kilo.
Indonesia has a potential supply of 1 million liters of used cooking oil each year, but currently 95% of it is exported to Europe and other Asian countries. Community collection efforts like this are key to redirecting the supply toward domestic SAF production.
Kalau dari awal kami hanya 80, 100, sekarang bisa 170 kilo per bulan.
Indonesia plans to introduce a 1% SAF blend in its aviation fuel supply by 2027. But cost remains a major hurdle. SAF can be 2 or 5 times more expensive than traditional jet fuel. Industry experts say the government needs to step in to ensure that airlines' use of SAF doesn't end up driving up ticket prices.
The Indonesian market for air transport is highly sensitive towards price. It's so much so that the government has not allowed any price increase for ticket since 2019. The fact is that SAF is still expensive. So even 1% of SAF in the fuel, that will drive the cost up. Inevitably, the cost of air ticket will go up.
Indonesia's ambition to lead the region in sustainable aviation fuel is starting to take shape. But real progress will depend on how quickly it can scale up production and secure a steady supply of feedstock. For now, SAF remains central to the country's net zero goals and could be its ticket to cleaner, greener skies. Saiful Bari Ismail, CNA, Cilacap, Indonesia.
Latin America also wants to position itself as a major sustainable aviation fuel provider because of its vast potential in recycling forestry and agricultural waste. Opportunities are being explored at the COP30 summit in Brazil, along with how SAF can be better deployed on the continent and internationally. And for a closer look at developments, I've got CNA's Yasmin Yonkers here for the very first time on our East Asia set. Very welcome, Yasmin.
Hello there, Oteli. So it's pretty exciting what's happening in Belém, Brazil with aviation, because it looks like the industry is finally getting to the nitty-gritties of how to achieve that net zero in 2050 goal, right? So they're zooming in on sustainable aviation fuel. They're talking about feedstocks. They're talking about who's going to grow more of it, who's going to pay for that, how to deploy more of it in the tanks of jets all over the world. And the other thing is there seems to be a little more consensus about who's going to take leadership, being the aviation lead, really, when it comes to climate. Is it individual nations, which in the past has proven to be a little problematic, or is it ICAO, which is the International Civil Aviation Organization?
Mm-hmm. And I've got to ask about China's role here. I mean, there's a lot of talk going on, but are they actually stepping up?
You know, it's interesting with China. They seem to highlight their green energy transition in another way. I've just taken a look at this. Aviation leadership hasn't reached such a significant stage when it comes to China. Its use and its production of SAF still not majorly scaled up at this point in time. At COP30, it's chosen to talk about a shared leadership versus going at it alone when it comes to being, the climate leader. And it's chosen to highlight its industrial shift towards renewable energy and electrification, but there's no clear message about what aviation's going to be like for China in the future. But there's no denying that demand for it in this region is very, very high. Think of the Chinese population and the number of people there who haven't even taken their first flight. And imagine when it actually happens.
Yeah, imagine, the
I think some leadership has to happen, yeah.
Yeah, perhaps at some point, since we're noticing more of the U.S. and its absence, right? So back to SAF again, it seems like there's a lot of priority on it, but in terms of being a game changer, walk us through it.
Okay. You will fly a little less guilty if SAF is, in the engines of your planes because it's made from recycled cooking oil, agricultural and forestry waste, which is why Latin America is like waking up to its potential as a SAF producer. It's very interesting. Sustainable aviation fuel, most airlines have agreed to 5 to 10% of it in their fuel tanks in the year 2030. Airlines now don't have too much of it because it's expensive and they're choosing to do other things to be more green. Let's hear from the CEO of Cebu Pacific Air, Mike Such, about what his airline's doing.
Airlines really should be looking at modernising their fleets to get the advantage of substantial fuel savings. And that is a 17 to 18% saving per passenger in terms of the carbon footprint that is being produced. So fleet is a big part. And then I think everyone's got an obligation to make sure they're taking the steps on what I consider to be the low-hanging fruit. Aircraft we can't electrify right from, at this point in time, maybe some point further down in the future, decades away, but we can certainly electrify all our ground equipment. So, we have a lot of ground equipment, buses, pushback tugs, all of these need to be replaced. So, again, airlines should be progressively replacing all those equipment. So these are the things that we can do today.
So airlines are not waiting for 2040 when all the super duper planes come out, like the hybrids and whatnot. They're all in testing stage, by the way, but they're looking at low-hanging fruit that they can clear, like what Mike Such said. So for you personally, with travel, what is low-hanging fruit for you that you can, clean up just to be more green?
Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to start doing is actually weigh myself, because we know that every extra kilo actually burns more fuel.
Weigh yourself or your luggage?
Weigh myself. And then, if I put on weight, don't travel, that's the strategy at the moment. But actually what I try to do is to, sort of bring my own disposable, not disposable, but my own tumbler, my own cup, so that less, single-use plastic.
Well, if you have a sporty family, try and do low-carbon activities, when you get to your destination. Take the train, cycle, go on a hike. I think that's a great idea.
And come back on the plane lighter. Thanks so very much, Yasmin. I know it's been a long day for you. You've been up since the morning, so thanks so much
nice
for
to be
being
here
with us today. Okay, and on that note, it wraps up Thursday's edition of East Asia Tonight. Don't forget your headlines anytime at cna.asia. Thanks for watching.